everybody. What a brilliant day, right? I have to say, I'm sitting here listening to all this, and I tend to believe that working in marketing is one of the most brilliant careers you can have, one of the most fascinating jobs. And it's more important than ever that what we're doing really leads the conversation in businesses right now. But it's also incredibly hard to be a marketer right now. The changes we're facing, the challenges we're facing. So having the realization that we do not have to do this all alone, that actually having the insights and the type of information we've had from today, from experts, can really help. And also knowing that there are other people going through challenges and that sharing our experiences and our perspectives and our problems together can make a huge difference, and it will speed up our breakthrough growth if we can have conversations together. So we were really, really happy and loved working with Kantar to put together the Growth Conversations report, which you've all got as bedtime reading to take home from today. It was fascinating to hear those conversations. And in a moment, we're going to do a very small espresso conversation. We've got a tiny bit of time with these two brilliant people to talk about what's it take when it comes to leadership and breakthrough brand growth. So I'm going to ask, in a moment, I'm going to ask Dom and Usama to talk about how they're feeling about all this, not just the facts, but the feeling about all this. But first, I have something to share, which is cutting-edge news, breaking news from Rebecca, who was due to be with us today. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're working in an industry you think's challenging, the energy business right now. So it was amazing that she was going to join us today. But one of the things about being a great leader in marketing is that you have to think about how you are being responsible, which I know is very much at the forefront of what Octopus Energy are doing, but also you have to be responsive. So this morning, the energy trade industry came out with a report which told every single energy customer in the UK that they needed to get in contact with their energy company and read their meters before Saturday. So I have a statement here from Rebecca. So before we start, this is an answer to the question of how are you feeling about all this, Rebecca? So if you don't mind, guys, I'm just going to read that out to you all. So Rebecca said, "Hi, everybody. I am so sorry I've bailed. So rude, and I hate doing that. I'm a massive fan of the Marketing Society and also of Kantar, and in fact, used to work for their CEO, Chris. He was one of my top 2 bosses ever. I have to include my current one or he gets upset. I've worked for Octopus Energy since it was a fledgling startup 5 years ago with 30 staff, and we saw Octopus Energy on the report earlier. We're now 3,000 strong across 14 countries. We're creating a different kind of energy supplier which puts fairness, greenness, and customer care at the core. But it's tough in energy right now. Not just in the UK, but across the world. Tough for customers as global prices go nuts, and tough for our staff who do an incredible job looking after customers day in and out. The recent government support package for bills is incredibly helpful, but things are still hard. My job as CMO, says Rebecca, is to face both ways, into the business to help them look after their customers, creating great experiences and clear messaging over and over and over again, and also out into the world to continue to drive our mission. That a green electron is a cheaper electron than a brown electron. Let's build more British wind, she says. And let's insist that every services business looks after its customers better. So again, gutted I'm not there with you all today. But energy is right now again a top story on the BBC. The phones are ringing with journalists and customers, and I need to be here with my team. But if anyone wants to talk to me about the subjects you've got today or follow up, my email is rds@octopus.energy. So that's Rebecca. That's how she's feeling about leading in a marketing role right now and getting breakthrough. And apologies from her, but please do connect and find out more about that brand and that marketing leader. Usama, what about you? As you're sitting listening to all this and looking at all this, how are you feeling about what we should be doing from a brand perspective and a marketing perspective?
Well, first of all, it's pretty obvious that difference is important. But I secondly think pretty optimistically. And the reason why I say that is I've had the good fortune to work on UK businesses and British businesses, but also to lead the marketing for businesses across Europe, Middle East, Africa, Australasia, India, Russia, a raft of places. And the thing that struck me today was the expected growth of the top 75 UK brands at 1%, and the growth of the top 75 from elsewhere being 23%. So I'm pretty optimistic. Optimistic because I think we should be stealing some insights from outside. Optimistic because I think we should be braver in what we do with our strategies. Optimistic because I think we need to be more pervasively innovative in what we do to drive meaningful difference. And I feel optimistic as well because if we can actually marry data and analytics and insights and link those to understanding the consumers who we want to target and the relevant messages that can be receptively received at the right time, and then deliver through breakthrough execution, we should be hitting the 20s. So I think we've got a lot to look forward to as long as we can double down, pull our socks up, and actually take some of our great British brands that have got headquarters located here and look a little bit outside to what others are doing, and then be brave enough to be geographically expansive and drive growth.
That's fantastic. We love a bit of optimism, right? And the ambition that's there. So very interesting you're talking about that, bringing the insight into what we're doing. And for all of us, days like today where we're not just looking down at our spreadsheets and our own businesses, but looking up and around and getting ideas and insights from elsewhere can make so much of a difference. Love the optimism. Tom, feeling optimistic or just feeling happy that we showed the ad earlier and it's such a great ad?
Probably like a lot of people. I'm over the moon that we got such a massive plug. Thank you, Don. Thank you for everyone that loves Yorkshire tea and takes it into the office or on holiday and all those things. But I suppose I am concerned. You know, the situation that Rebecca just outlined, I feel for Rebecca and I feel for her staff, but it also just reminds me that I really feel for people. You know, I feel for the kind of challenges that the average member of the British public is going to face into. And I want to approach that with optimism and positivity, but I think probably my key thing today was about the role of empathy, because I think it's one thing to realise that difference can be powerful, but it's the idea that meaningful difference is more powerful. But where are you going to get that meaning from? And I think there was something about those two quotes that I really liked. One was that idea that people build their idea of brands in the same way that birds build nests. I think it was straws and scraps. Yeah. And I love that idea because it's about recognising that we're not the most important thing on the consumer's mind. We're a fleeting thing and we'll be, exchanged for the next focus of attention any second. But the other one was around the watch out that too much of a pure focus on consumer centricity can lead to a loss of differentiation. And I just thought, well, there must be something that you can synthesise from those various points of view, which is around consumer understanding, definitely. So understand what matters, because that way, if you're going to go for difference, you can guide that difference so that it has some meaning, which is obviously a lot harder to do than it is to say.
Yeah, I would actually argue that consumer centricity, and apologies to people who've been on the stage earlier, but I would argue that consumer centricity isn't about understanding just what the needs are today, but it's to understand what the unmet needs are. It's to understand where the future stretch of your brand, your organisation or your product can go. It's to understand what your competitors are doing best. At PlayStation, we measured ourselves not just against others within the gaming category. It's pretty obvious to measure yourselves against Nintendo and Xbox and others. But we actually realised we were in the attention economy. So we measured ourselves versus Apple. We measured ourselves versus Instagram. Because what we wanted to be is a high engagement brand. And we measured our equity against our core targets. And the ambition was to overtake Apple with gamers to be more meaningful to them. And indeed, we did that over time. And that's pretty tough to be able to do. Now, we didn't do that with everyone because we didn't need to, but we actually had target segments, 7 different target segments, in fact, and we managed to overtake Apple in 6 of those.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it, to set your competitors and think about experiential competitors and who else is out there and the mindset change you get from that. And Dom, I mean, this point about human understanding and empathy, I think we've all spent quite a lot of time recently understanding the accelerating power of technology and getting better at technological understanding, right, the algorithms and what we can do. But how we continue to hone that human understanding, both for our customers, but also leading our teams through difficult times and just looking at what's happening in the world at the moment is really, really important, isn't it? And these are tough times, right? We've got to have the sympathy and the empathy, but we've still got to be brave, right? We're talking about this idea of difference, and it's fascinating to see the data behind it. But I know that what so many people struggle with is the courage to really properly be different and to lead that kind of disruptor mindset that we've talked about. What have you both been doing across the businesses you've worked on to look at leadership in a different way when you're thinking about disruption and innovation and challenge and being different?
I could maybe take that first if that's okay. I think I've been thinking quite a lot. This is more of a personal thing around me as a manager, as a people leader, and I'm definitely not the only one talking about this subject at the moment. But that concept of vulnerability, and I think particularly as a sort of foil to toxic masculinity, so male vulnerability, because it feels like it's something that's not that common to handle openly. And I don't know if this is maybe a slightly pretentious extrapolation, but just the idea of starting to think about how brands can come across as more human by having a bit of vulnerability to them. I think sometimes there's this tendency as marketers that we want everything to be sort of boxed in and slick. Now, maybe that needs to be the case if you're a high-end luxury car brand or something like that, but I think certainly for operating in a category like standard black tea, which is a very universal, democratic thing, there's this sort of real payoff if we can come across as empathetic and human. Which I think includes fessing up when we haven't got it quite right. I don't know if anyone will have even been aware of this, but there was a whole thing about plastic in tea bags a few years back. And as everybody massively accelerated their transition from oil-based plastic in the tea bag to plant-based plastic, when we did it, ours were going wrong, and some of the tea bags were coming apart in people's mugs, which for a brand dedicated to properness is a bit of a problem. And I think the way that we ended up handling that by kind of saying mea culpa, we're trying our best, but we've gone too fast here and we're going to slow down and get it right. It went from feeling like we were really under the cosh to suddenly we were being celebrated for responding in a human way. So I think there's just something there about brands acting like humans.
And the humans behind. I mean, this is why this kind of conversation is so interesting, right? To hear that story that's behind success or behind the challenges you face and how you deal with it. And getting the human back into the conversations, because that's the customer centricity point, right? How do we continue to do that, and how can we lead that?
Well, I think as leaders, we need to invest in understanding individuals. We need to understand groups, and we need to understand a broader remit. I often call that, how can we affect culture? How can we affect the tribe, those that are within your category? And how can we affect difference for the individual? And if you can humour me, I'll tell you an example of something which I worked on back in 2007, which is still running to this day. And it was grounded in deep consumer insight. And it was when I worked at P&G, and I was the business leader on the Pampers brand. And I was really fortunate to be able to work on that brand. It's the flagship brand. It's a massive business. It's 10 billion revenue globally. And I didn't have kids, but I needed to understand the consumer. So we spent a lot of time on insight, on analytics, and really getting under the skin of the mum-to-be and the new mum. And what we quickly understood was, yes, they wanted a product that would help their kid to sleep through the night so that they could be better mums and the baby didn't get nappy rash and was healthy. But actually, really importantly, that bond that they had with their newborn was incredibly strong. And they wanted others to be able to have happy and healthy mum and baby development as well. And so we partnered with UNICEF. We worked with them on a bold but very lofty ambition to try and eradicate maternal and neonatal tetanus from the world. We made a simple mechanic, which was for every pack that you bought of Pampers, one potentially life-saving vaccine could be donated. Over a short period of time, we extended our market share leadership. We in fact knocked the number 2 largest player out of the marketplace, which was Kimberly-Clark's Huggies in the UK. We drove top-line revenue, profitability, equity. We managed to keep our plant open in Manchester, which otherwise was going to move to Eastern Europe, creating value for all the people that work there and their families. But most importantly, over 15 years, understanding and having that empathy and that continual drive to make things better. Maternal and neonatal tetanus has been eradicated in over 25 countries. Over 300 million vaccines have been donated, and over 1 million babies' lives have been saved. Now, from a tiny acorn, a massive oak tree can grow if you can find the right idea, if you can understand that consumer, and you can truly drive a difference. And it wasn't all P&G. It was P&G UK and Ireland working really closely with partners of UNICEF. It was working with agency. It was understanding insight. It was delivering the vaccines with UNICEF. But together they really did something which I think transforms lives and adds true value.
A brilliant example, and a great example as well of how working with partners and other people can speed things up and make it more successful. But also the responsibility we have to be the humans inside the organisation who can connect back to. I mean, that's a great example of the strong core foundations for the positioning of the brand that you went back to bring that out. I'm just looking at the chair next to you and thinking about the whole Amazon having the chair in the boardroom to represent the customer, right? And doing that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that perhaps the role of marketing inside organisations is just to actually have the marketing people be that person that is reminding people that we need to connect back to what's there. But I think one of the tensions we see is between going back to the core fundamentals and understanding and human understanding, and at the same time, as we've talked about today, needing to innovate, needing to move things on, needing to disrupt. And should you be consistent? Should you not be consistent? How have you both found that challenge of creativity in the new and also the courage of being consistent with what you're doing?
I think, firstly, sort of staff turnover being low can really help. You know, if you think about the average tenure of a marketing director or a CMO, you do end up often with basically somebody who comes in and waits for a year for the last person's stuff to finish, delivers the one thing that they kind of sold themselves on in their interview, and then spends the rest of the third year looking for another job or, being moved on if what they didn't work. And that turnover can obviously like really fight against the consistency over super long term. Like I'm lucky that I guess our business is a little bit unusual, family owned and quite recently family run, but I've been there for 6 years as marketing director. I've been there for 14 years in other different roles. So,
amazing.
And there's quite a lot of senior people who have stuck around. So it means that we've been able to we kind of landed on this notion of properness as a really powerful kind of central idea to build around, a bit like with generosity for Cadbury. And we've been able to experiment with getting that across and then working out how we can tweak the way that we get it across. So we're not deviating from the message. The message is the same. We're just gradually learning a better way to get that across. And then I think with the ad featuring Sean, which hopefully people enjoyed, that's not the only ad we've done that features a Yorkshire celebrity who's famous for being good at something. And thankfully, we've been able to keep finding other really famous Yorkshire celebrities. Like our latest version features Sir Patrick Stewart, which is a sort of Marvel Comics fanboy. I was a bit geeked out to be in the same room as him, but I really like that ad, and it's got a completely different tone. It's very it's got like a quiet drama compared to the bombastic performance of Sean. So hopefully it just sort of shows it is possible to do those sort of brilliant basics of consistency without becoming boring and samey. You can just, in a way, isn't that a fab challenge for creative people to go, here are these basics you've got to work with, but do something different with them?
Yeah, great example. And creativity, I mean, we talk about it as, is that the marketer's role? Is it the marketer's role to sponsor it, to support it? I mean, how do we keep that creativity alive in the UK particularly, which has been so well known for being a creative workplace?
Well, I think, first of all, we completely overcomplicate things at times, marketers, and we talk in, mumbo-jumbo and acronyms. And actually, we just got to bring it back to the basics. Who do we want to target? What do we want to say? How do we want to say it? Where are we going to say it? And how are we going to differentiate by assessing the landscape? And if we do that, then actually you can design a brief which is ownable, distinctive, memorable, which therefore should be able to create a initiative or a creative tool or a new product design, whatever it be, to be able to drive. So I see marketers' roles as both strategic and creative. You've got to be a bit of a Leonardo da Vinci. It's a bit of a marrying an art and a science. But most of all, you've got to represent that consumer, because that's our unique position in the boardroom, is that we can always own that. When it comes to creativity, I think what's happened over the years is some people have, especially during the COVID period, maybe not been as brave. I think there are brands that have been more distinctive. Yorkshire Tea is a great example. I love their meter-long teapot. I remember that during the COVID period, of really embracing COVID and actually having a little bit of humour. And I think that really, cut through and stood out. But I think creativity is incredibly important. There are so many touch points and platforms. The average person in this room, according to Meta, will scroll through 300 feet on their mobile phone today. Okay,
Great stat.
That's
terrifying.
That's 91 metres, right? So the only thing that's going to be doing a marathon, and it's going to do 2 marathons this year, is my thumb, right? Okay, so that's incredibly important for us to be able to understand how do we connect through what platform, in what way, and how does that ecosystem add up. And I've been fortunate enough to work at places like Disney Plus or PlayStation, who had brilliant teams who worked collaboratively together, not against one another, when designing the creative across all those various touch points.
Brilliant.
Sophie, if I just jump in. Thank you. I don't want it to be too much of a love-in, but I thank you for recognising the social distancing teapot. When we launched that, I don't mind saying, we agonised over that. So obviously what we want to come across is something that has an ease, a lightness of touch, as Dom so nicely put it. But internally we agonised over, is this the right time to send this message out there? If we take a sort of a funny look at social distancing and the awkwardness and the fear of returning to the workplace when COVID's not over, is that going to land really badly and people will think it's poor taste? At the same time, if you're trying to play it so safe, you end up producing a really neutral ad that isn't funny and doesn't make people laugh. So there's a balancing act to be struck. But I think I also just wanted to say that as well as the watch out, because we can overcomplicate stuff and use too much mumbo jumbo, there's also just, I don't know if I'm just trying to assess the average age in the room. I'm definitely old enough to remember what I consider the heyday of TV advertising, when ads were often more funny, more entertaining than the programmes they interrupted. And I really miss those days. And I don't think that's just some sort of middle-aged nostalgia thing. I think that's generally a better idea, that if you interrupt people, if you interrupt them in a way that they don't resent you for, and they actually appreciate it, and possibly you pull off lodging some straw or scrap in their mind as a result. And I think that's what we should be doing with advertising.
Yeah. Dare I say it, what's happened is, with big data, there are probably more CMOs out there that are one-sided of one brain than another, and they don't have as much balance. And that may lead them to more rational than emotional benefits to focus on, or it may mean that they're trying to pile in tons of different benefits into a single brief. And that's never going to cut through nowadays when you're watching a TV ad in your second screening. And to be honest, TV ads are important, but you're going to be able to catch, connect, close, and continue a conversation with other touch points much better. It may be your hero piece of copy, but it's others that are probably going to give you the better ROI.
This is so good. There's lots that came out from the growth conversations about humour and the opportunity there. I think the challenge for us all and the opportunity as marketers is that the art and the science, the creative and the commercial, the right and the left brain, the rational and the emotional, that's what makes it so interesting but so hard. One of the things that has made this so interesting but also so hard to host this conversation is that each of these people could have talked to you for 20 minutes alone and told you all kinds of things, and we just ran out of time. It went too super fast. So thank you, both of you. And we're going to go over to Amy now to finish us off. Thank you.